This is the story of a Wild West adventure. You can read along with me in your book. You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the chimes ring like this. Let's begin now. One day, when Gumby and his friends were rehearsing in the barn, a special delivery letter arrived. Pokey, Prickle, and Goo took a break while Gumby read the letter.
Well, fellas, we got the job. A concert at Tombstone Gulch Opera House.
Shaking his head, Prickle turned to Pokey.
That's rough country. A lot of outlaws around Tombstone Gulch.
And there are bandits there, too.
Goo stifled a grin.
Pokey? Bandits are outlaws.
Smiling, Gumby finished the letter.
It says here, the new sheriff has rid the town of outlaws. He guarantees our safety.
So Gumby, Pokey, Prickle, and Goo loaded the band equipment into their trailer and set out for Tombstone Gulch. They drove high up into the mountains, holding on tight as Prickle navigated the twists and turns. Whenever they rounded a curve, Pokey covered his eyes.
These cliffs are too much. Let me know when we're at Tombstone Gulch.
Gumby looked at the road ahead.
It won't be long now, Pokey. We're almost there.
Finally, they drove down the mountain into a small ravine. This time, the Jeep bounced over rocks and brush, and Pokey squeezed his eyes shut.
Now I'm getting sick. My stomach can't take these bumps.
Prickle pointed to some deep ruts in the road.
This is a horse and wagon trail. You'd really be sick if you were in a wagon.
Suddenly, Prickle saw something up ahead. He slammed on the brakes. In the middle of the road stood a bearded man wearing a red flannel shirt and suspenders. He was smoking a pipe and holding a large whip. Prickle frowned.
Uh-oh. Looks like trouble.
The stranger tipped his hat, then grinned.
Howdy, my friends. You come along just in time to help me out of a fix.
Gumby spoke up.
Sure thing, mister. What can we do to help you?
I'm getting way behind in my schedule at the silver mine over yonder.
The man pointed to a tunnel dug deep into the hillside. Gumby looked at his friends, then shook his head.
Oh, I'm sorry, mister. But you see, we have a concert date we are on our way to right now, and besides, we've never done any mining before.
Suddenly, the man's expression changed. He sneered, twirling the pipe between his teeth.
You're in luck, 'cause I'm going to give you a chance to learn right now. Time's a-wasting, so let's go.
Cracking his whip, he shattered the windshield on the Jeep. Gumby and his pals jumped out and hurried into the mine. They worked hard all day. Gumby and Prickle swung heavy picks to break up the ore, while Goo lifted it off the ground and loaded it into a cart. When the cart was full, Gumby helped Pokey pull it down the tracks to a trestle outside. The miner watched from below.
Faster, faster, this ain't no funeral.
Pokey dragged the cart to a dumping chute. Then Gumby tipped the cart on its side, spilling the ore into a railroad car below. And still the miner urged them on.
Snap it up, will you? Let's get moving back in there.
It was starting to look as if they wouldn't make it to their concert. Suddenly, Gumby had an idea. He whispered something to Goo.
Oh, good idea, Gumby.
Then she flew out of the tunnel into the bright sunshine. The miner was busy lighting his pipe, so he didn't notice her. Goo flew behind some rocks and landed beside the Jeep, then began unloading the band equipment from the trailer. First, she set up the drums and plugged in the amplifiers. Next, she hooked up a microphone, setting it directly over the drums. After putting on headphones, Goo reached for a switch to adjust the speaker volume, but she accidentally hit the wrong one. Out blasted a terrible screech. Goo ducked, and the miner whirled around. He scanned the area, then after a few moments, turned back to the mine.
I ain't never heard that bird before.
Goo breathed a sigh of relief.
Whew! I almost blew it.
Meanwhile, inside the mine, Gumby told the others about his plan. Then he shoveled as much ore as he could into the cart.
Well, fellas, this load should do it. Prickle, you wait just inside the tunnel entrance.
Roger.
While Prickle stationed himself at the opening, Gumby helped Pokey push the cart down the tracks. Just as they had done before, Pokey and Gumby hauled the ore outside. And as usual, the miner was waiting.
Come on, get along there, little pony.
He cracked his whip.
I said get a moving there.
Still in hiding, Goo waited for the signal. When she saw Gumby and Pokey stop directly over the miner, she turned up the speakers and beat the drums as loudly as she could. It sounded like gunfire. Frightened, the miner spun around. As soon as his back was turned, Gumby and Pokey tipped the cart over. The pile of silver ore poured out onto the unsuspecting miner, covering him from head to foot. With one arm free, he cracked his whip furiously in the air. As fast as they could, Gumby and Pokey climbed down the mountain. They jumped in the Jeep beside Prickle and Goo, who had already loaded the equipment into the trailer. Prickle stepped on the gas, and they set off for Tombstone Gulch. Behind them, in the distance, they could see the buried miner cracking his whip. Finally, Gumby and his friends arrived in the old western town. They pulled up to the opera house and quickly unloaded their equipment. As they hurried inside, Gumby could see people crowding into the concert hall. Soon the band was ready. When the sheriff walked on stage, the audience quieted down.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to bring you now the Gumbys.
Gumby dusted himself off, then stepped up to the microphone.
I'm sorry we're so dirty, ladies and gentlemen. We didn't have time to take a bath because we were hijacked this afternoon, believe it or not.
Just then, the front doors of the opera house flew open, and the angry miner stomped into the room. Stopping in the middle of the aisle, he glared at Gumby. A woman in the audience cried out,
Jack the Ripper!
Gumby swallowed nervously, then pointed at the miner.
And this is the man who hijacked us, Sheriff.
Before the sheriff could move, Jack cracked his whip and snapped the microphone away from Gumby. As Gumby fell backwards, Goo shot 2 clay balls at Jack. They splattered across his face, blocking his vision. The sheriff grabbed the miner's arm.
Come on, Jack. We're going to jail.
But Sheriff, he dumped a load of silver ore onto me.
Jack the Whipper cried all the way to his cell. In Tombstone Gulch, the Gumbys put on their best show ever. Gumby, Pokey, Prickle, and Goo played song after song, delighting the audience. They may not have been very good at mining, but they were great at making music. And that day, while the Gumbys were in town, the Old West went wild. That was the end of the story. If you'd like to hear it again, just turn the tape over.